This episode contains material that may be triggering to some individuals. Please check the show notes for more information and be mindful of your own mental health and comfort levels. Hey, podcasters! Are you tired of endlessly searching for the perfect guest for your show? Well, look no further. Podmatch is the ultimate platform for connecting podcast hosts with guests. Whether you're a seasoned podcaster looking for fresh voices or an expert wanting to share your knowledge, Podmatch has got you covered. It's kind of like a dating site for podcasts. With Podmatch's advanced algorithm, finding your perfect match is just a few clicks away. Simply create your profile, specify your interests, and let Podmatch do the rest. You'll be matched with guests or hosts who align with your interests in no time. To get started today, visit www.joinpodmatch.com/Quiet Connection Podcast and start making meaningful connections that will take your podcast to the next level. Welcome to Quiet Connection, a podcast dedicated to ending the stigma around perinatal mental health. I'm Chelsea. Today, I'm chatting with Nancy, who shares her incredibly raw and honest journey into motherhood after adopting her son, George. George came to them with intensive needs and extreme violence. Nancy's story is one of unwavering advocacy, facing immense guilt, and fighting a system that often fails the most vulnerable families. Her book, When the Bough Breaks, is a resource of hope and community for parents walking a similar path. Prepare yourself for a powerful discussion about trauma, survival, and the profound love required to make the most difficult choices. Let's dive in. Today, I am here with Nancy. Nancy, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to chat with you. I especially love the connections that I make through Podmatch because I get to learn a little bit about you beforehand. But yeah, I'm excited to chat. And for my listeners, I would love it if you could introduce yourself, let us know who you are today, and who were you before you started your parenting journey?
That is a great question. Wow, it seems like a lifetime ago. My name is Nancy Ferraro. I am now a Florida-based estate planning attorney, and I am also the author of an award-winning memoir called When the Bough Breaks. Years ago, when I had a little 4-year-old, I decided that I wanted to give my son a little brother. And for various reasons, we adopted from Romania. George was 4 when he became a member of our family, but he arrived in the suburbs of New Jersey a feral child. He was a wild animal in the body of a boy, and with a host of disabilities that we weren't expecting, from fetal alcohol syndrome to attachment disorder, low IQ, the extreme behavioral challenges, we came to know George as Hurricane George. And so that was almost a decade, almost every day, of my being the victim of the violence that the fetal alcohol syndrome produced in him. So before I became George's mom, I was very wide-eyed. I believed that I could solve anything with enough love. I'm mom, I can solve anything.
Uh-huh.
So the challenge and the lesson for me through all of this, hindsight's 2020. While I was going through it, it was very dark, and I believed that there was no end in sight, there was no light at the end of the tunnel. But what I realized was that we're all stronger than we think we are. You deal with
Uh-huh.
it, and that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's actually a sign of strength. And being on the other side of it is so amazing. It is such a beautiful gift because now I can lead other parents through. And I did write a book. It won a national writing competition. And I wrote it to shed light, share hope, and form community. So I'm thrilled to be talking to you about that today.
Yeah, and I'm so excited. I'm excited to be talking to you about it as well. Again, there's so many aspects to your story, and we're going to get into it, that I know will resonate with so many families and so many families that have experienced something similar. But just like everything we talk about on Quiet Connection, it's so stigmatized and people aren't talking about it. And the more that we talk about it, just like you're saying in your book, creates connection, creates that solidarity, and it creates the ability for people to feel safe in asking for help. So, yeah, I'm like I said, I'm so grateful and I'm excited to kind of get into this a little bit. So, let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning. Even before the beginning, did you always envision yourself having children?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I always
yeah.
believed that I could do it all. I was gonna save the world with my little briefcase, and I was gonna raise the world's most perfect children. Well, they're perfect in their own way, right? They all come with their challenges, but it's, something I always wanted to do, and I feel like a nurturer. Of course, there's no manual, and that was the hardest part because you feel like you're making it up as you go along. Every day is different, and there's nobody to call, say, or somebody to say, "Go to page 243 in the manual."
Yes. Exactly. Right? We all had the what to expect when you're expecting, but that does not prepare you for having an actual child.
That's right. Right.
Yeah.
And so the fact that I had a typical child first and then an atypical child, they were different, but they were the same in a lot of ways because they were each challenging in their own way. So whether your child is just defiant, whether your child is a drug problem, an alcohol problem, criminality, it's all the same because when we can't fix it, we as mothers believe that we can fix everything, right?
Uh-huh.
When we can't, not only do we blame ourselves, but society blames us. It's a very isolating, very lonely feeling. So if you think about Son of Sam, if anybody remembers Son of Sam killed all those people, his mother never wrote a book. All these people who have committed horrific crimes, gone off the deep end because we don't want to talk about it. But guess what? It's incumbent upon us to talk about it. I had a responsibility to write this book. I didn't even have a choice because I survived. And we're all vertical, right? We're all basically thriving. And I thought, certainly, I'm not the first, I'm not the last, and I'm not the only. But when I was going through it, I felt like I was the first, last, and only, right? So mothers and or anyone who has stood in the shoes of motherhood need to know you're not alone. And I just had a conversation yesterday. It was a Zoom call about business. And I started talking about the book. And the gentleman I was talking to ran and got his wife, and she's crying because she's in a situation where her older child hates the younger one with the special needs. And it was almost like she just started flooding because she knew that somebody else had gone through it and someone else survived it.
Uh-huh.
And so many times we cut ourselves off from that because I don't know about you, but I never wanted to join a support group because I don't want to get embroiled in everybody's. You get into these rooms and everybody's complaining and you just get dragged down,
Uh-huh.
right? So I always fought the support group model, but I formed my own support group and I thought, other people should not have to do this. You should not have to reinvent the wheel. I've reinvented the wheel.
Yeah.
Let me share this with you. Certainly, what I went through for almost a decade should not be for naught.
I love too that you are so candid about your approach to all of this, right? Like because it's not a one size fits all thing. The support group model, so like full disclosure, I'm a advocate and volunteer for Postpartum Support International, and we really advocate for support groups and we have so many of them and I facilitate some of them. That's not going to work for everyone. But that doesn't mean that there isn't somebody or something out there that you're going to connect with that can give you that little tiny glimmer of hope when you're in your darkest moments, right?
Right.
So, I love that you highlighted that and that you kind of took that on and created your own space of support. I'd love it if we could kind of start from the beginning. So, I know we're going to talk a lot about George, but you have another child, and the journey to that child was not straightforward, if I'm remembering correctly.
Right. So we had this wonderful, amazing child. And what I'm about to tell you is going to sound very weird and oogie. But when I was holding my older son in my arms, I remember having this thought and being so grateful. Everything was perfect. And I was so happy. And I remember thinking, I so wonder why God did not give me a special needs child because I could so handle one. Be careful what you put out there because then I ended up with George and
Yeah.
remembering that I called him, the world. Think what you want, whether it's God or karma or the universe. You put energy out there and your angels, whoever it is, they hear you and they bring it, right? So,
Yeah.
not to get all spiritual and weird about it, but when I got George and I thought, oh my gosh, I put that out there.
Almost like a manifestation.
I know, crazy.
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking millions of dollars. Angels hear me. So, I'm putting it
Yeah.
out there. Millions of dollars, bring it. So, yeah, it's the weirdest thing, but I feel like I was meant to raise George. Not
Yeah.
because I'm special, not because I'm knowledgeable, but because I had ESQ behind my name. And I wrote every letter to every agency, to every school district on my law firm letterhead. And it wasn't that I knew anything. It was that, and this is sad, it's very sad. People just assumed that I had knowledge, power, and I didn't. But their assumption gave me that knowledge and power. So I work very, very hard to empower not only my clients, but parents to have that attitude because you are the expert on your child. You are
Uh-huh.
the expert. And when you're walking into an IEP meeting or you're walking into an agency and you're asking for something, you're not begging, you're not looking for a favor. You're just demanding respect. And I try to instill that in all the parents that I speak with because they feel disempowered by the system. "Oh, I'm gonna fight the school district." Well, I fought the school district. I didn't have any special education knowledge, but I ran all
Right.
of Georgia's IEP meetings, and I would stomp my feet and pound the table, and somehow that got results.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, let's let's talk about it a little bit because it's ironic. I do come from a special education background. I was a special educator, intensive needs special education, for 10 years before stepping outside of that, and I am a parent of neurodivergent children. So I kind of see it from both sides of the table. I have had those parents come to the meetings that feel so disenfranchised or who feel like they don't have a voice, and I have had the parents who come to the meeting with an agenda and a get it done attitude and everything in between. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume as you as you were getting to know George and as you were learning to advocate for him, it wasn't an immediate like, "Okay, I got this." Or maybe it was.
No, it
No.
wasn't. No. So when
No.
you get a diagnosis from a neurologist that says speech delay, you think, "Oh, I'll just love it out of him. It'll just take time. It's a delay." No, it's a medical term of art that means a permanent disability. So it took me a long time and a lot of experts. I mean, I drove up and down the highway. I remember pulling over to the side of the road and just screaming at my insurance carrier because they sent me to 4 different psychiatrists who just wrote 6 prescriptions and said, "Let me see him in 2 weeks." Never looked
Mm,
at my child, never did any kind of deep dive into it. And frankly, I was on a mission for the cure because I'm still mom, right? I'm still going to fix everything and I'm going to cure this. Well, you hit your head against the wall enough times and you have a doctor back you up against the wall and say, "Are you going to, use a come to Jesus moment?" You have to adjust your expectations. You have to adjust to the symptoms. There is no cure. And I went to, as far as going to Virginia, we found a doctor on Dateline, believe it or not, right? And he is called the Emperor because he is the leading expert in the country on Eastern European adoption. I sat in front of that TV and shook because everything he was doing with those children resonated. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is the rest of my life." And when I contacted him, I never thought I would hear back. We were in his office within 2 months, which is crazy because I thought I had found the cure. Now I found the guy, right? He is the golden god of international adoption. Guess what? George is so severe, he wanted to see him. That's why he made room in his calendar. And he sat me down and said, "You've got a life sentence here." And there was a lot of alcohol that night because, you're going to someone you think is going to give you the key to all of this, unlock it all. And what you're getting is, no, this is what you're stuck with, and this is how we're going to treat it. And the training and protective holds and all of that. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is my life.
Yeah, how did that so you said there was a lot of drinking that night. Um, how did that hit you as I keep hearing you describe yourself as, like, the mother, as the fixer, as someone who envisions herself as the fixer. When someone says, "This isn't something that's going to be fixed, it's something that's going to be accommodated." How did that hit you?
It's a moment of failure on multiple levels, right? So our marriage didn't survive, but that was to be expected. But also had an older child in my home, and I was trying to make life as normal as possible for him. And the fact that I blame myself for stealing his childhood to give one to George, that I don't think that guilt will ever go away, even though my older son has turned into a wonderful, empathetic, beautiful human that I don't think he would be if he had not had this experience. But I know there's trauma. I know there is going to be something in his life that I caused, and there's no way that I am ever gonna relieve myself. First of all, I'm Catholic, and Italian.
The guilt, right?
So
The
the guilt
Catholic
goes all
guilt.
the way around, right?
Yes.
So that is something that I will be working on for the rest of my life. But also having failed George, having failed my family, and my adoption agency offered to allow me to abort the adoption. And I thought, "Great, what is that?" First of all, if I had sent George back to Romania, I have no doubt in my mind that he would be dead in a very short time. Because they didn't care for the children, he'd be on the street. It would be just horrific. So I would be condemning this child to death. And then I thought about my older child and I thought, well, what does that teach your older child? That people are expendable? That when they get inconvenient, so you're foisted on your own petard, right? You can't pull the sword out, you can't leave it in. So what do you do? And that moment was probably the darkest because I just felt like I'd failed everyone.
Yeah. I I so appreciate I mean, it's up to this point, your vulnerability. My tagline lately has been like your vulnerability is your strength, right? But it is so important to talk about these things in such an honest way, in the way that you are, because for a lot of families who are navigating, I mean, whether it be through an international adoption and like you said, like a lot of the time you're not entirely sure what you're getting when you meet this child, or whether it's your biological child and they have intensive needs or low incidence disabilities. I think a lot of people have this vision of disability as the cute kid in the wheelchair, or you know what I mean, or like the little boy who's deaf. And there are so many families who are struggling with safety. There are so many families who are struggling to literally just get through the day and hope that their child goes to sleep at night so that they can go to sleep. And it doesn't diminish your love for either of your children. It doesn't diminish your determination. And then also acknowledging that shame and that Catholic guilt, which I still can't shake. I no longer identify as Catholic, but that Catholic guilt, man, that'll stick with you for life. And I don't want to diminish that either. So like when I say to you, I don't think it's your fault, any of it. I know that that doesn't take that guilt away. So I want to hold space for that. But I also want to acknowledge what a badass you are because despite those feelings and despite not having a background in these things, you did leverage what you did know and what you did have, and you fought. You fought for George. Talk to me about the early days when you were navigating what this new reality was going to look like.
Well, we had George when he was 4, and I had seen him, and the first time I saw George on video, he was 3, and he was so adorable, and I was physiologically pregnant with him.
Yeah.
The moment I saw him, "That's my child, I need to rescue him." And believe it or not, from day 1 to the day we got George, it was 9 months, almost to the
Wow.
day. Right. So it was like a full-term pregnancy. I was nesting, I was buying stuff, it was crazy. But we got there, and George would run away from me and laugh. And I thought, "Well, he doesn't know me,"
Mhm.
right? So when we first checked into our hotel in Bucharest, they had those old-timey luggage tables, the sharp remember those sharp wooden George ran into it, fell down, and he laughed. And I thought, "Oh, he didn't get hurt." And then I got him ready for his first bath, and when I undressed him, there was this huge gash. So these children were raised to not cry because they first of all, they wouldn't be attended to, and then they were trained to get adopted. He only said mama the first time I saw him, and he only said tata, which is daddy, the first time my ex-husband saw him. Those words never came out of his mouth again until we were in an elevator going up to see a psychologist who we left in tears. But George is getting in the elevator, and there's the UPS man, and George takes the UPS man's hand and says, "Tata," and I broke because my husband was so crestfallen. We had just spent a king's ransom, come from an international trip, made all these provisions, and tried so hard. And here's this kid calling somebody else daddy, and my heart just broke for him. So, when at the beginning, he wasn't acquiring language, and I thought, "Well, I'll just speak to him in Romanian," because I had mommy Romanian, "Wash your hands, brush your teeth, be careful, it's hot," all those things. And time went by. He wasn't answering me in English, he wasn't answering me in Romanian, and he didn't seem to understand anything I was saying. So we started out in the ESL class, English as a second language, and the teacher's calling me. He's not picking it up. I think he needs to be in the special needs classroom. And that's basically when I lost my mind because I thought, I can't, I, I, I don't know anything about this. And I just can't wrap my arms around it. The first summer we had George, I could not have picked up the phone to make a call on his behalf, even if you held a gun to my head, because it's denial. You don't want to believe. And over the years, I've met so many parents who, for years and years and years, have lived in denial. And now they're aging and they have 40-year-old special needs children in their home. They have no provision for them, they have no plan. And that's heartbreaking because when something happens to those parents, either they get too old to care for that person or they pass, there's going to be a very traumatic transition for that child. They act out, they elope, they commit crime, and it's not fair. So we owe it to our children. I am just so grateful that I broke out of it because had I not, there would still be George sitting, in the corner with his thumb in his mouth. So
Right.
I'm very grateful that I shook myself and picked a mentor who I met in the grocery store, by the way, a mom in a grocery store.
Right? The most unlikely
I
places.
can't even tell you. I've gotten more information from other mothers than any agency, than any facility, because frankly, they don't want to help you. They don't wanna do their jobs. They're government employees. Not to say all government employees are this way. This was my experience. I had one woman they called it the Division of Developmental Disabilities in New Jersey, and on her outgoing message, it was always, "Have a blessed day." But I started talking back to the message because when I'd get her on the phone and I would say, "I know there's after school slot at the Jerry Davis Center," which was the ARC, ARC. in
Mhm.
New Jersey, in my neighborhood, I know there's a slot and I know George is next on the waiting list. And she would say, "How'd you find that out?" Like, "What? Is this the CIA?" And then she tried to scare me off with 50 pages of paperwork. She said, "Oh, but it's 50 pages." And you know what? I had that paperwork back on her desk the next morning
Of
because you
course you
have to get
did.
mad. You have to get angry. That's the only way things get done. You have to demand respect, you have to get angry, and you have to become Tiger Mom. There's just no other option, right?
Yeah. And it shouldn't be that way.
No, it
I mean,
shouldn't.
it goes without saying, but it shouldn't be that way. And I completely agree with you, and it resonates with me, right? Like, the government agencies who are supposed to be supporting our children and supporting us in supporting our children fall short, and that's putting it lightly. It is the other moms, it is the other parents with lived experiences, it is it's like the PCA workers, it's the people who are living with this every day that you're gonna connect with, that you're gonna learn the most from, and that you're gonna rally with. And yeah, you all have to learn to become tiger moms. And this, just as a side, this isn't about me at all, but even as special educators, so many of us feel like we have to be tiger teachers to fight for our kids too. Um, we call them our kids. They're not every
I
child
get
that
it.
I've
They
ever
are,
worked, you
but
know
they
what I
are.
mean?
Mhm.
Every child that I've ever worked with will always in my heart be one of one of my kids. But this was one of the things that really drew me to you and wanting to have this conversation, is because I know that fight. I know it from a professional standpoint, and I know it as a parent. Um and I'm so glad that you brought up that your mentor, the person you connected with, you met in a grocery store, and it was another mom who went through it. So, so you have that heartbreaking moment of George just taking the hand of someone else and calling him dad. You have the frustrating moments of calling for the support and doing the work and putting the work in and being met with roadblock after roadblock. And this doesn't even touch on what you're dealing with at home and what your other son is witnessing. Like, those behaviors that you described. Would you mind talking about it a little bit? Because I don't think it's talked about enough.
Right. So, fetal alcohol syndrome produces extreme violence in children. And with George, George's birth mother was not only very young, I think she was about 14 years old when she had him, but there's no prenatal care in Romania. At least there was not at the time. And she apparently drank that home brewed plum brandy that they make that I tasted
Mhm.
when I went to get him. It's like grain alcohol. So George had all these insults to him in utero. So the fetal alcohol syndrome, the low IQ, lack of oxygen to his brain when he was born. And then couple that with the way they fed him in the orphanage through those bottles with the big holes in them, the glug would come. And so he had to develop some kind of a mechanism to keep from choking to death. So he has no phonemic awareness. He has no idea where his tongue is in his mouth, which makes him very hard to understand unless you know him. So for my older son, I actually let him do things and get away with things that I normally would not. I was trying to just give him some normalcy. I would let him spend time with his cousins and go places and do things. But at home, it was terror. We had a 50-foot driveway and it was gravel. And I would hear the bus coming down that driveway and it would get a knot in my stomach. And when I tell you I can open a bottle of wine without a corkscrew in a split second, I could do it. I could then. There's a way. I'll teach you if you want to know. But
It's
I
another
could not.
podcast for another day.
And
Yeah.
George would come in the door, and I never knew what it was going to be. Right? I never knew. He could come in and be quiet and sit down for snack, or he could come in cute, perfect, and then snap and start attacking me. So In comes Dr. Federici and teaches me this way to control George sort of without hurting either one of us. But George is very squirrely. He found a way to pinch, like, that part between your thighs where it's really hurts? I only
Yes.
knew it, but he would always manage that. So the behaviors would start cycling, right? He would just a curtain would come down, George would disappear, and this animal would just start attacking me. So I would have to get him on the floor in a protective hold, flat affect, calm voice. Now you're being attacked, right? That in
Yeah.
itself is an exercise in self-control. And I'm soothing, I'm talking to him in a very soothing manner, blah, blah, blah. And there's something that Dr. Federici taught me called extinction behavior.
Mhm.
So when they rage, it goes up, 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 up. And then they give one last shot to see if they're going to get somewhere. And that's when it comes down. So if you can make it past that, then he would calm down. And the craziest thing is when he would do that, he would look at me and go, "Snack?" I'm like, "Oh, Jesus.
It's like, "Oh, wow, that was exhausting.
I'm
Can
not
I
over this."
fuel up?"
And then
Yeah.
my mother moved in with us. So on top of everything, she would come out of her room with her walker. "What's going on?" So you're in the middle of this rage, right? And I'm trying to give her the eye, like, "Go back in your room, mom." And then she'd bend down and go, "What's wrong, George?" And he would go, "Mall." And my mother said, "I want to go to the mall too." Like, "Oh, so now you're here. And now you have to go here before you even can think about that rage coming down." So that was fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a blast. It's a situation I have been in my professional life many times. Yeah, that's a perfect that was fun. Um, but exactly what you're describing is again something that I've witnessed, something I've experienced, and something that I don't think people realize is a daily occurrence, not just a daily occurrence. It's like I was saying earlier, you're just waiting for bedtime. Like, please sleep tonight. Please sleep tonight so that I can sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You just it's an exercise in survival. And when you talk about this kind of a thing, you're not supposed to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder because you're a mother, it's your child. What
No.
really messes with your head? And so for a long time, after we placed George in the group home and there was peace in my house, I couldn't deal with it because you're
Yeah.
so used to being in crisis mode. I had a friend come visit and stay in my house, and she said, "Nancy, your house is loud. Your house is loud." Well, it was, you can't help it. She said, "But
Yeah.
if you don't have a crisis, you manufacture one."
Mm.
And that stung, but I realized that she was right because I didn't know how to deal with life without a crisis. I would see someone relaxing reading the newspaper. I'm like, "Who the hell do you think you are? What gives you the right to sit here and read the paper?" Because
Yeah.
you're always supposed to be doing something. You're always supposed to be putting out a fire. You're always supposed to be add that to the fact that my ex-husband is also an attorney calling me and saying, "I could really use your help in the office." I can't remember my name. So,
Yeah, what
okay.
exactly do you expect from me right now?
Exact and he didn't understand because, if I could have done it, I would have. I can't say that I wouldn't have done the same thing, but leave before the kids got up and come home when they were sleeping. I mean, there were times when he was home and we'd have to physically carry George to the bus. Arms and you get one end, I get the other end, because he's not staying home. I'm sorry. He's raging, but he's not staying home today. So, he wouldn't get dressed, he wouldn't put on his shoes, he wouldn't cooperate. But when I look back on it, I really wonder how we survived.
Yeah.
But I actually do wonder why I'm sitting here vertical, basically. And the only thing I can come up with is it's not just me, and I don't mean to make this a spiritual moment, but
Go for it.
I realize that it wasn't just me. And I know that I questioned everything. And I wondered why God was punishing me, what I did that was so horrible that I was being punished this way, and was sure when I was done with George and I don't mean done with George. We placed him in a group home. And I told my friends not to stand too close because I was actually expecting a lightning bolt from the sky to take me because I thought, I've got nothing left to give. Don't ask anything more of me, God, because I got nothing. And eventually that feeling passed, but it was years before I felt as though I was even ready to make a contribution to anything.
Yeah, I mean, understandable. Just like you said before, like post-traumatic stress. Um, of course you can experience PTSD from any trauma. It's post-traumatic stress. It comes from trauma, and you are experiencing daily trauma.
So it's
And
not a magical transformation. So this is
exactly.
where I was, this is what I dealt with, this is where I am. But it wasn't magic by any means. It was long and it was painful and it was therapy and it was crying. There is something you have to give yourself time. And I almost say that when you have a special needs child, it's like you're grieving every day. I don't mean to say this in the wrong way, but it would be easier if somebody died because you have a chance to move on. And at the end of every day, you have a new death.
Mm.
So you never get a chance to grieve it and to heal. The wound never heals.
I think that that's a beautiful way of explaining it, honestly. And I'm curious too, you mentioned like it took therapy, it took crying. What was the turning point for you when you made the decision like, okay, we need outside assistance? Like when you started exploring the group home option, um, what did that take?
Well, the first neurologist I took George to, who I thought knew something, because I knew everything better than I was interviewing doctor. I was doctor shopping. But this doctor sat me down. George was 4, and she said, "This child belongs in an institution." I went,
Mm,
"Next." He's a 4-year-old. So
yeah.
he was violent in our home. I had a behaviorist write me a letter because she told me to turn his doorknob around so we could lock him in his room at night so he couldn't attack us. And to my ex-husband's credit, he said, "I'm not having DYFS, the family services, come in and arrest us." And she put it in writing that we were allowed to do that for our own
Mhm.
safety. So we went like that for quite some time because George was little. Even though he was strong as a truck driver when he was raging,
Mhm.
I felt scared to institutionalize him because I had an idea that it was going to be, you know, a building with kids strapped to the beds. It was frightening to me. And he was little, and I was afraid that he was going to get hurt. When I finally opened my mind to the idea and the fact that I don't have 24-hour staff and we couldn't control him and he was dangerous, I started looking at group homes. And once I found out that they're not those, those institutions with bars on the windows, they're housed in a neighborhood. They have 24-hour staff. I don't have 24-hour staff. George has staff. They check
Yeah.
on him every 15 minutes and they live like a family and they're trained and they have shifts and they go home and refresh themselves and then come back. It was almost like discovering nirvana. And I believe that is the best thing I ever did for George because he has a fixed schedule. He has people who care for him. He is thriving. And when he goes out in the community, he's basically the mayor. He wants to know how in his limited, in his limited dinner. He wants to know, did you eat dinner? What did you have? And so he could write a book. And he's the mayor until he's not, of course. And he is still raging. But I am no longer the victim of that violence. And for that, I am extraordinarily grateful.
And I'm curious too, what feelings went along with that? I'm definitely getting a feeling of relief almost, but I'm surmising that there was a period of grief as well
Oh,
because like you said, like
absolutely.
right, like you were his mother. You from the moment you laid eyes on him. So having to make that decision, like what what was going through your mind at that time?
And that's why I called my book When the Bough Breaks, right? You know the nursery rhyme. Because when the bough breaks, You have to reinvent your relationship with your child. You have to give up your expectations of what you thought their life was going to be. You have to give up your expectations of what you thought they were gonna be in your family, and that is a period of grieving because y you have to wrap your head around it. It's not easy, but in the long run, because George is doing so well, and he's so happy there, and he has a program that he goes to, and he feels like he's making a contribution to society. I couldn't give him that in my home, and the fact that I did this for him made me feel like I did the right thing. He was meant to be with me. He is where he's supposed to be. We talk every day. I get a picture of his coffee. Shows me his room. It's full of Eagles, and that's what he wants, the Philadelphia Eagles, whether you love love them or hate them. George is the biggest fan. So, we have a relationship, but it's not what I wanted in the beginning, and it's not what I expected.
Knowing that, like you said, you were meant to be his mother and you mothered him in the only way that you could. You weathered the storm and you fought the battles, and then you found him a place where he could be George, right?
And let's not forget the lack of support in my extended family
I was
because
gonna ask about it. I was gonna ask about your support system.
when we first did it, my ex-mother-in-law came and said, "What have you done to my grandson?"
Ugh,
Well, first of all, at the beginning, she would say, "Are you sure? Are you sure he's special needs? Because I think he's smarter than you're giving him credit for. And, oh, he's not violent. You just don't know how to talk to him." Really? So one day we left George with her, and the three of us went out to dinner. We came back, and George is sitting, he's straddling my mother-in-law, and he's beating her with his fists. And I thought, well, I guess you don't know how to talk to him either, do you? So that kind of battle that I was fighting with them, every time I got respite, they questioned me, but they weren't going to take him. So they didn't want to acknowledge it, but they didn't want to deal with it either. And I believe now, after so many years, I mean, we don't have a relationship anymore, but she had to come around to see that this was the best thing for George. But the whole time I was going through it, I was the enemy and I wasn't helping my husband in the office. I thought, this is fun.
when could you
It
do
wasn't
that
fun. And it
exactly?
was so disheartening not to have that kind of support because they could have lifted me up.
Yeah. Did you have any, like, I know you said your mom moved in for a little while. What was the support like from your side of the family?
It was almost like they were competing for my attention.
Ah,
It was
okay.
very funny because I got George into the group home and my mother said, "Finally, now I can get some attention." I thought, "I'm running to the mall twice a week with my mother because she was Returns R Us. She'd buy well, it took hours, you had to walk her, and I'm
Yep.
bringing the entire handbag department to her, one purse at a time. She finally settles on something, and then the next day she would come out of her room and say, "I have to return this. It's
Oh
too
my god.
heavy or it's too," and so it was almost like she reverted to childhood and I was the mother. I asked my mother to come live with us, basically to help me, and I ended up with another child. So she meant well, she just didn't know how to deal with George. And then she felt like I was taking attention away from her, which was funny because I didn't have anything to give. I was giving everything between
Yeah.
her and George and my older son trying to it I just didn't know what to do anymore. So, there was no Nancy.
Yeah, you were kind of an island and you were just in constant survival mode every minute of every day. Um, I mean, let's kind of we've talked about the supports that you didn't get, the fights that you had to fight. We've talked about the lack of support from family, and you touched briefly on your older son. Um, do you guys talk about the experience at all of, like, bringing George home and having a little brother and what that, because you said he's a very kind and empathetic and understanding person, and you don't know if he would be the person that he is today if George wasn't a part of your family. Do you have discussions around that at all?
Not really, and I don't think he realizes that but for George, he would have been a selfish only child, right? I don't think
Okay.
he realizes that, and it's still very tender because last time I went to California to see him and I started to say something, I said, "You know, George, blah, blah, blah." He said, I don't have to hear this now.
Mm,
I know that when you and dad are gone, I will be responsible for George and I'm okay with it." But I don't hear it. So I know he is still traumatically scarred. So I tread very lightly and I don't bring George up. I can't because he still has wounds that he hasn't healed.
yeah. Yeah. And again, like, we're not gonna speak to his experience, but
And it's really not my story to tell.
right? Yeah.
It's his story to tell if he so chooses. And I think something coming from him, from his perspective, would be very powerful for siblings of special needs children to read because I know that he suffered. And I know he has said before, "I don't blame you, mom. We didn't know that George had special needs when we adopted him. All the reports said he was normal. I know you didn't mean it, mom. It's not your fault. I don't blame you." But there is an undercurrent of resentment.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I'm sure that they exist, but I think siblings' perspectives would be so helpful to families, to parents, to other siblings. And it goes back to, like, I mean, our whole mission here, talking about these parenting experiences. The more that we talk about it, the more understanding there is, and the less stigmatized it is, so that the reaction may not be like, okay, I don't need to hear about this right now. Right? Like, it would be just a typical conversation, like, okay, yeah, how's George doing? What are we gonna, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, his story to tell, and maybe someday he will. But I want to give power to you in this moment, that you, like you said, you always envisioned yourself being a mom, being a caretaker. Even when you had your first son, you were like, I could have a special needs child. Like, and like you said, like, the absurdity of that even popping to into your head in that moment and
Right, it was
recognizing
really
that,
weird.
right? But you did the best that you could with what you had to raise your 2 sons, and they are who they are today, and it sounds like George is happy, and that, right? And he's in a place where he feels, like you said, he's the mayor. I I love that analogy. Um, but just kind of giving power back to you, which I don't think you need to hear it from me. I think part of you knows it, but you're a badass. You weathered the storm and you made really, really hard decisions because you're a mom and you were their mom.
We're all badasses
Yeah?
because
I
we
mean,
have to
moms are
be.
badasses.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we have to, and just like you said at the beginning of this episode, the blame is placed on mom for everything. The responsibility is placed on mom for everything. And it's not fair, but it's also kind of like a self-perpetuating cycle. We're always gonna be mama bear. We're always gonna be mama tiger, because that's just, I don't know, it's just how we are. We're gonna
but
fight for our kids.
would we have it in either way?
Would we have it any other way? You know, I like to say, I say I would not wish my experiences on anyone, and I wouldn't repeat them, but I would never trade my children for
Oh,
anything. I don't know
absolutely.
if that resonates, like, right? Like, I would not do that again. I would not do that again. But I also would not trade my children for anything in the
You know, I
world.
wouldn't do it again. I certainly would not do it again.
No.
Hear me,
No.
Lord, I would not do it
Yeah.
again.
Yes.
But
But I
having said that, am I grateful for having had that experience? Of course, because it has catapulted me into this position of having lived this, having learned about these things, and God gave me words to tell the story. The craziest thing is I always loved writing, and I never felt I had anything that anyone would want to read. And when I started writing this book, the words poured out. I couldn't move from the computer because it's something that needs to be talked about. It is something that women especially need to know that you're not alone. And, the statistics are kind of crazy. I just spoke at a very large special needs conference in Florida over the summer. And so I learned a lot about the population of special needs. And in the United States, there are about 20% of us who have some sort of neurodiversity. I know for me, I'm definitely ADD because I'll start this project over here. And then, at the end of the day with the kids, I'd be starting all these little projects. And then it'd be time for my husband to come home. And I'd look up and, oh my God, we've been robbed. And you have no idea the amount of stuff at 5 minutes to 5 that went under the sofa. I just and for years, I'm pulling papers out. I'm like, "I didn't know I forgot about this. I forgot I had this." Things just went under because daddy's coming. Try to make it look normal. Yeah. No,
Put it in the closet. Yeah.
I definitely have ADD, but that's okay. I'm happy with it. There are other people in my world who don't and are very happy to be my organizers and my paralegal and you know, my spouse is very organized, and so I'm grateful for that because I lose stuff. We can't all be good at everything, right?
No. It'd be nice if we could. But that leads us so beautifully into your book and the work that you're doing for advocacy today. Advocacy in the neurodiverse community, and, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, especially for my listeners who want to learn more about what it is you're doing.
Okay, great. Well, the book was a bridge. So I started writing it s 10 years ago and actually shopped it, in New York and got some requests for book proposals, but I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what a book proposal was. I didn't know I had 10 pages, but I knew I had to get it out. It had to come out of me. And I called my older son and I said, "Listen, I've gotten book proposal from this publisher." He said, "I'm not over my childhood with George. You can't do it." And I honored that and I put it away. And then several years ago, I got an email. I had been stalking a writer's retreat in Vermont that I wanted to go to.
It's where
And
I
I got,
live. That's
wow,
really weird. That's where I live, yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I got this email that said, "We're having a national writing competition. Send me the first 10 pages of whatever you're working on." Well, I had 10 pages. Sent it.
Yeah.
And I became a semifinalist in this competition. And I again called my older son and I said, "Honey, I won't do it if you don't want me to." And he said, "No, I'm proud of you, mom. Go for it." I said, "Okay, honey, don't read the book." And I hung up and went on to win this competition, which was insane. And it garnered me a traditional publisher, but it's a bridge. So even unless you're Stephen King, your publisher doesn't help you sell your book. But that's not why I wrote it. I wrote it for awareness. So now I'm working very hard toward a speaking platform, and that's why I've started to speak. And the privilege to speak at something like the Family Cafe, where there were 13,000 participants, was amazing. And what I get is so much more than what my audience receives. Because when I get in front of these moms and I talk about what I went through, and we end up crying together. We end up laughing together. But what that's doing is forming community and women hugging me and saying, "I'm not alone." So I bring the resources and but it's more than that. They're just not looking for, because anybody can Google respite. It's
Right.
internal. The work is internal. The work is internal to realize that you're entitled to help, that your child's best advocate, to come from a perspective of, we are on George's team. How can we make this better for George? To be informed, to know the law. You don't have to go to law school, but you have to know what free appropriate public education looks like. You have to know what modified plan looks like. You have to know what an IEP is, and you have to be brave enough to speak it because, frankly, advocacy, it's just not love. You can't love is not enough. But I always say advocacy is love in motion, and that is sacred.
That is beautiful. That is such a beautiful way to put that. Honestly, because a lot of us can say that, like, I'm a mental health advocate or I'm a special education advocate or but advocacy is love in motion. That wow, that breathes life into that. That is beautiful. I'm going to adopt that now, just so you know.
You may.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, no, I think that that is beautiful, and I so admire that you didn't have to, you didn't owe it to anyone, but to take your experiences and turn them into something that's going to help the next family is something that's beyond measure. It's like you said, it's solidarity, it's I'm not alone, and it's hope. It's holding hope for that person who doesn't see it.
So,
Um,
as a warning, the book is raw. It's honest.
yeah.
I am
Yeah.
not an angel. I'm not a hero. I'm not a victim. I'm just a mom who was plunged into a nightmare and lived to talk about it. So, nobody wants to read a fluff piece. And I've read self-published books that say, "Oh, I'm in a happy place and I can show you how to be happy." We don't care about that. We wanna know, when were you unhappy? What happened to change it? Because you're
Yeah.
not gonna believe anybody. I give no credibility to authors who say, "Oh, this is but I'm not gonna tell you anything about myself. I'm just gonna tell you how to fix you." I don't follow those people. I wanna talk to authors and read authors who say, "This is where I came from. It was really dark. This is how I fought my way through, and this is how I can help you." So I realized that I couldn't sugarcoat any of it. The book actually reads like a novel. I want it to be an easy read, and it is. It's a fast read, but it gets the point across. You know, you're not gonna find there is a little background because there had to be around when Ceausescu fell in Romania. So there's a little bit of that, but it's necessary if you understand where George came from and what we were
Yeah.
dealing with.
And I respect that, and I that is something that I subscribe to as well. I believe that, being vulnerable and talking about the hard is the only way to get to right? To get to when I say, like, holding the hope, it doesn't mean we're all holding on to sunshine and rainbows. It means I've been there, it's dark, it's really dark, like, below the basement, down in the dirt dark,
Yeah,
but it's a chapter, and it's not your whole story. It may be a long ass chapter, but it's not your whole book.
that's right.
So, yeah, I could literally sit here and talk to you for hours
I know, me
if I did
too.
not have to oh my gosh, if I didn't have to go pick up my toddler from preschool, but because 'cause I'm still in those trenches,
Wow, I
um,
give you a lot of
but
credit,
yeah.
that's a lot.
I've got a 10-year-old and a 3-year-old, man, and they are both wild in their own ways. So and we're a neurospicy we call ourselves neurosparkly. Um, that's the term we like to use, neurosparkly. So we're it's just all chaos and sparkles in our house. When and I don't mean that as rainbows and sunshine.
No,
I mean
I hear you. It's rainbows and sparkles, I know.
you know what I mean? Like, when the glitter is everywhere and you can't get it all up, yeah, that's we're neurosparkly. But regardless, anyway, not about me. For anyone listening, and I know that there are people listening that this resonates with, and they wanna learn more about you and learn more about what you're doing, where is the best place that they can find you?
Okay, I have a couple of websites and my contact information as well. I can give you a quick phone number, which is
Sure.
772-222-7979. Should be
Okay.
pretty easy to remember, and that is my law office, but I you can reach me very easily there. And the website is www.nancy-writes.com or www.ferrarolawpalmbeach.com.
It'll be in the show notes. We always like to remind our listeners to check the show notes because you're going to find really good information in there, and you can connect with our guests that way. But Nancy, you are a powerhouse. I have loved chatting with you this morning. I can feel the love that you have for both of your children and the empowerment despite, or maybe even because of, everything that your family has gone through. And I appreciate you sharing so honestly with me today.
Thank you. You're a powerhouse too. You have to, go get kids now.
I do. I have to go get kids and try to eat some lunch sometime. We'll see. Who knows? But yeah, thank you so much, and keep doing what you're doing. Your book is on my list now. I've got a
Great.
growing list, but it is on my list.
Thanks for having
All right.
me.
Oh, I almost forgot. I'm ending my episodes a little different these days. I'm challenging you. So I'm hearkening back to the days before cell phones, before we were all able to be found and reached and easily accessible. And so you called into Quiet Connection today. You called the Quiet Connection hotline, and you don't know who my next guest is. You don't know anything about their story. You don't know anything that they're going through, but you've got to leave them a message because you called in and they weren't here. And you can interpret that in whatever way you would like, because that's how I get my best responses. But so you called Quiet Connection and you're going to leave a message for my next guest. What message would you like to leave for them?
Hey, I've got it.
Okay.
I am going to tell her, no matter what you're feeling, no matter what your challenge, someone needs to hear your message. Someone needs to hear what you're going through. Someone needs that connection. Be brave. Tell your story.
I love it. And I've never got the same response twice.
Really?
So,
I can't wait to hear what my
absolutely.
message was.
I know, and I want to. That's the cool thing, is I really want guests to check back in with me and be like, "Oh yeah, that totally missed the mark," or be like, "Wow, that's what I needed to hear." I think it's this cool little social experiment. So we're gonna see how it goes. Nancy, thank you. I sincerely appreciate your vulnerability, honesty, and your tiger mom ferocity. I hope Nancy's message resonates with you today. You are worthy of support, you are worthy of care, and you are your child's best advocate. To connect with Nancy and follow her journey, all of her links, including her websites, are in the show notes. If this episode helped you feel seen or validated, please follow Quiet Connection on all social media platforms. For exclusive content, early access, and to support the mission of breaking cycles and stigma, check out our Patreon or Substack. You'll find all of those links in the show notes as well. If you'd like to share your journey on the podcast or just connect for some solidarity and resources, you can reach me at my website, quietconnectionpodcast.com, or by email at chelsea@quietconnectionpodcast.com. Join us next time when another story is told and you realize you are not alone. I see you. Hey, it's Chelsea. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for tuning in and being a part of the Quiet Connection community. Did you know that you can support me and gain exclusive perks by subscribing to my Patreon account? By becoming a subscriber, you'll get access to bonus episodes, ad-free listening, exclusive chats, and even monthly goodies in the mail handmade by me. Your support helps me continue creating high-quality content and ensures that we keep spreading awareness and ending the stigma surrounding perinatal mood and anxiety disorders and so much more. Head on over to Patreon, search Quiet Connection Podcast, and join the community of listeners who are helping me make this podcast the best it can be.